Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our weekly trade and tariff briefing. I'm Christine Rafikian, Senior Director of International Programs here at World Trade Center, Utah, and I have the pleasure of facilitating today's conversation. If you're here for the first time, this weekly webinar series is intended to provide you with the latest information about trade and tariffs. You can view previous webinars on our YouTube channel and find updates to our tariff dashboard on our website, which we'll link in the chat for you. Today, we're excited to hear first from Ben Kolendar, Chief of Staff here at World Trade Center, Utah, about updates to the World Trade Center Utah Tariff Dashboard. We'll then welcome Phil Poel, Executive Vice President of Global Supply Chain at Traeger. Over to you, Ben.
Thanks, Christine. Um, Before I share my screen, I do want to say thanks to all of you who were able to attend our summit the last couple of days. And if we have any gaps in information, I blame all of the logistics and everything of the summit. So apologies in advance. But want to say thanks to our partner, Zions Bank. We had such a great turnout and great content. And, where our team working with Science Bank really thrived with that summit. And my view is a lot of what we do on this webinar in terms of providing a crystal ball, voices that could do that, real live business cases that people can borrow from. And Phil and I are going to be talking about some of what Traeger's doing today as an example of that and really highlighting services that companies should be aware of as well that can help them navigate all the turbulence. We heard from Peter Zion that there were 7,400 tariff changes last year. And, we've been doing our best to keep up on every single one of them. I'd be surprised if we missed one, but with 7,400, that's quite a bit. So, all to say, the whole purpose that we do this and that we bring these tariff updates to our wider audiences, that's a lot to keep up with. And as much as we can bring this substance through conversation, make it easier to navigate through conversation or using our tariff dashboard with the primary source documentation for all these decisions, that's really what we're here to do. And so happy to have you with us. So, first thing I'm going to do now is just jump into sharing my screen here. I hope everybody can see this. Doubtful at this point any of you are here for the first time, but if you are, you can always access our dashboard at wtcutah.com/tariffs, where you can also have a link right here to share this information in this webinar with others who would be interested in receiving this information as well and navigating this tariff climate. So I'm going to start today with probably the biggest news of the week. The Court of International Trade made a big decision this week on the 122 tariffs. So these are the tariffs that are in place until July 24th. We've updated on this webinar several times before. This is a primary source documentation, the court case, but essentially, the Court of International Trade was split in a split decision, 2-1, had ruled that these tariffs on 122 are illegal and that, that I should adjust slightly. They ruled just for the businesses that the businesses that filed this lawsuit should be refunded, given that these tariffs are illegal. So if you're thinking, great, I'm going to be able to jump into the CAPE system, get refunds right away, because 122 tariffs were just deemed illegal by the SIT. Hang tight. There are a couple of considerations. One is that, there's still a potential process to go through here. So the IEEPA tariffs ended at the Supreme Court. We want to look out for what the Department of Justice is going to do as next steps. But also, the court ruling itself was pretty narrow in terms of who is going to be refunded, and it was only the businesses in this case. And so, in order to be considered, you're going to have to file your own case to receive those refunds. And so, while you're weighing those, it would be good to monitor the situation on what the Department of Justice does, but be thinking through what your actions might be. And now's the time to be consulting with your counsel on next steps and what that would look like. But the short is that these 122 tariffs, which are currently slated to end July 24th, are at least for the cases filed are deemed to be these businesses are going to be issued refunds. So moving on, and I know we're probably going to have questions around that. Phil and I are going to dialogue in just a little bit on some of these things as well. Another update for this week, a couple of them regarding the refund process for IEPA. So the CSMS, there were so many cases or concerns around scams, and we've heard this on the webinar a couple of times. Be careful about responding to random emails about refunds or doing refunds on your behalf. This has been such an issue for Customs and Border Protection
Mhm.
that they're now issuing a CSMS to flag for businesses to really pay attention, reiterate the process and guidance that they've sent out in the past. So that's linked. That CSMS is on our page. And also a nice little update on the CAPE system that they have a dashboard they wanted everybody to just be aware of in terms of monitoring the refund status and what that looks like. We went over that last week as well, but with some additional details here from the customs messaging system. So, next update that we're going to go through here briefly, and I won't spend too much time on this because Phil and I are going to jump into this and other topics as well in a little more detail. But the provisions, some technical provisions released by CSMS regarding imports of aluminum, steel, and copper, and some clarifying guidance, specifically, adding the Chapter 99 code that sort of separates some of this, and also a notice that UK steel and some provisions there with Tata Steel are highlighted. If you're doing that, you may want to, if you're involved in any of those as a Utah business, you may want to be checking out those provisions and reading through that CSMS. Um, Last but not least, there was just a CSMS released on autos and just clarifying some of the USMCA provisions, and also monitoring that there's an open threat for the UK to raise their tariff rate on autos to 25%. So a bunch of stuff we're monitoring right now on the tariff front, but I'm just going to jump in and open up some dialogue with Phil here. So, Phil, for those of you who don't know, yeah, we've talked about the SVP for Traeger and all the important titles and roles that you have, but more than anything, just love the ability to riff with you on tariffs. Your knowledge on this is so helpful. If there's anything I've got a gap on or we're trying to get our head around, it's like, hey, what's Phil think or what's Phil doing in this realm? And so it's so great to have you, Phil, and ask you to come on board to one, maybe have a little bit of a dialogue that we can have back and forth here, but also highlight some of what Traeger's doing on some of these actions that maybe other businesses could learn from. So maybe I'm going to pause there and hand it off to you, Phil, and then we can have a little bit of a back and forth here.
Got it. Well, Ben, thank you. For some reason, I've just lost my camera.
Oh,
Um,
we'll navigate
so
through it. So as
I
you're going, we can.
apologize for that. Yeah, thanks again. Always wonderful to be part of these conversations and to join with you on discussions around this. I'll take you through a little bit of the 232 and what Traeger has really been faced with. So obviously understanding our product and what that is, which contains a lot of steel, and the 232s, I think, as everyone knows, they've been iterative all the way back when they were instituted in 1962, and it's just kind of grown and grown. And to this point now, we've got our situation we had coming into last year, which was we were getting hit on the 232 with the full value of our product. We were fortunate enough to get an executive order in June of last year that mitigated that to allow us to go to the actual value of the steel versus the full value content, which was a huge win. Unfortunately, that was reversed when they simplified the 232 here just recently. So I think everybody is trying to navigate this with some level of success, but also there's a lot of blocks that have happened as well. And I'll start with the blocks and then go really to the successes, which the blocks are really people were looking at how do I get below 15% in overall value? And there are some areas that was allowed for certain commodities, but for most that was put to waste, meaning that they would not allow, even if you did draw down into the 15% content, your overall value was still being charged. The other one that we had looked at was using US steel and the cost of that to bring product not only into China, but also into Vietnam. They have a return on their tariff saying to us, hey, guess what? We're charging you for bringing in US steel. So when we did the cost parity and checked the kind of that pricing, that was a no-go for us as well, which has left us really with an opportunity to go back to Commerce to say, could we file for exemption based on our HTS and the category that we are in? With everything that's happening in Washington, and I was just there last week, it is very busy with other things, even in commerce. And I would say they are much more focused on enhancing other areas of customs and border, specifically around anti-dumping. So they are piling a lot of money into that. They are piling a lot of money into customs to be able to really search and start new investigations across the board. So I'll pass it back to you, Ben, and that's really kind of where we're sitting right now on 232. So
Yeah, and maybe Phil, we can have a back and forth about some of the impacts in terms of broadly speaking and what these 232 tariffs did because you're back on.
yep,
That's great.
found it.
Um, so a lot of our companies are facing a similar situation in that that executive order was really helpful that
Mhm.
put this tariff onto the steel content and it was very specific and narrowed. And and now these new provisions come out and say, okay, we're going to do 50% on fully steel products, and then if you have this content, okay, and you have a product that has steel in it, we'll look at 25%. And there's some nuances to this and
Yep.
other things. But if you're importing a product that has this substantial amount of foreign steel in it, now you went from potentially facing an effective tariff rate of, in some instances, 5% to 2 to 5% to 25%, right? And so you guys are seeing this adjusting and looking at what the total steel content is and what the threshold
Mhm.
is. You're doing some really unique things. A lot of our businesses are facing this. What immediately did you go to? What are you looking at? What should other businesses zoom in on as it relates to their particular products? Like a general
Yeah.
principle, so to speak.
First thing, because of the way it was revised, and simplified, or what they would say, although that may have been a simplification for Customs and Border and how it was being looked at, obviously in our HTS code or in people who were affected by that executive order that we got passed, it reversed it. It sent it back the other, not fully, but basically to the 25% line. So my suggestion, and I'm happy to take calls on this, or if people want to reach out to me, is to be able to go back to the executive order as a basis to say, you granted this to us in the past, and it was because of the valuation with regard to our category. So if I look at other companies within our Utah base or within, what the WTC can kind of point us to, and being able to help to say, well, you were also affected by that executive order, and it helped you, gathering that back up, going to Commerce and saying, look, in these HTS codes, there was a reason that you gave that to us. And so I'm going to be pushing back on that to say, I think you should hold to what you had done in that reasoning, because that was a benefit to us, to our customers, to our sales, and to our overall cost structure. So that really is the pillar right now that going forward with. And at this point, It's the only thing that I think Commerce is really interested in listening to. Um, and that way, there are some exclusions happening on the 232 based on that, but there's also
Yep.
a ton of work happening in Washington with regard to the steel and the steel content issues in the United States, opening new mines in Tennessee, trying to restart other mines in Missouri. So there's a lot of it going on. So I would say Commerce will listen. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
That's helpful. And as we're talking this through, just so you know, Phil, I'm pulling up our tariff dashboard, and we have these primary source documents
Yep.
in our resources section. So you can navigate through that to see whether it's an executive order, the Federal Register with comments, the completed steel reports here as well. So as you need to go reference and make your case, if you are documenting in a way that you feel is justified with this new guidance that's been given, all these primary source documentation is in the resource section, and it's for the steel and aluminum tariffs, which are here as well. So just to say, as you do that, you have the dashboard as a resource. You can go back to it and navigate
Yeah.
appropriately. So
Yeah. I would, for those on the line as well, especially if you're new, again, I apologize for my camera flashing in and out here a little bit today, but the WTC has been not only a huge resource for us at Traeger, but it's been a wonderful backup and resource for us when I go to Washington, D.C., to be able to not only work with Ben, but to work with Jonathan and the team. The resources, I think, are some of the best as far as documentation, staying in front of everything. So, folks online, I highly recommend, if you're going down this, is to reach out to the WTC or spread this out to people that you know that would be of benefit, because it sure is helping us at Traeger really navigate this, but also just the content that you have on the WTC, I find to be really, really, tip of spear for us. So,
well, thanks, Phil. I appreciate all those kind words. Can we shift to 122s for a second? I know a lot
yeah.
of companies are thinking, okay, 122s are have now they're probably reading the news on the Court of International Trade and saying, okay, great. Now I'm not going to pay these tariffs anymore. Or, oh, I need to go file a
Hmm.
legal case immediately. Or, like, if, can you break down the realities on what, if you're a
Sure.
business navigating this, what this case means, what it doesn't, and yeah, like what you guys are doing and what you're monitoring.
You bet. You bet. So, it's been an interesting road, especially coming out of the Supreme Court, and how they have somewhat defaulted or passed along the judgment to the CIT, not only on IEPA, and that being kind of the court of decision, if you want to say. So I don't think that this is going to get reversed, meaning their ruling of a 2-1 on the 122. It will be challenged by the DOJ. I'm almost positive of that, which that will put a stay on it for probably 60 days. And during that time frame, you're going to hear a lot of things about um, the 122. Will we be able to file? You know, it's speculation on my part at best with regard to, do I think it will stand? I do. I think it's going to hold, and that they are going to end up probably in a refund status. When they're going to refund, we're still waiting on ACE to release the overall timing on refunds coming out of IEPA. So I think they're kind of really gathering all of this to make sure, one, that it can be done. There's still not a portal for it to be, if you want to say, encased, someone like, looking through ACE and then to the CAPE system on IEPA. So I do think 122 is going to fall, which then just leads to the next discussion around 301s and how they're going to be implemented. So,
That's right. And that's the next, it's great transition point, 301s and everything coming up there and navigating it. I'm sure you guys are probably providing public comment or at least weighing it, considering it. and these two 301s specifically on excess capacity and on forced
Hmm.
labor, a lot of businesses may not know what to think of these as they work their way through the process or what to do. Maybe talking through that a little bit would be helpful for some of our audience as well.
Yeah. For those of you, and I don't know if people online have governmental affair groups or if you're navigating this. And again, always helpful. I'm always happy to help the WTC with the groups that are online and so on if you ever have questions. But my suggestion is go back and understand the 301, all four lists, and understand where you sit on that. So take your HTS codes. We just did this over the last 2 days where we went line item by line item, looking at our HTS codes to say which ones are going to get hit, and which ones are not. So, for instance, we've got a lot of accessories, and in the accessories, some of it was on list one, some of it was on list three. And those are going to start to fall because they are 4 years old. They are from Trump 1.0. So you're having the first round, which is list one, going to drop here in probably July. Then you've got an August. Then you've got an October. Then you've got a November. So one, two, three, and four are going to start to drop and either have to be replaced in some fashion. But it's very clear that you will have an opportunity for comment on this starting now with regard to list one. So if you look at your HTS lines and you say, hey, that product is caught up in list one, that's your chance for comment. That's your chance to input. And you can utilize that through the WTC to be able to find those right portals to say, here's where we need to comment and potentially get your product off from list 1 301 or list 2
Mhm.
301. There are some very clear opportunities that I would recommend going through your list to understand that. That could be a very good win for the members and the companies online. And then I would say the other side of 301, which you also need to keep in play, which is the 301s were really pulled up because of, and I'll use simple phrases around stealing of intel. So if you remember back when Lighthouser and I was standing in front of Congress getting grilled on this, which was, does your product in any way allow transference of intel through Bluetooth? Is there anything that would do that? And that's where the 301 really started. It expanded to multiple areas of materials and content around that, and then transpired into the four lists. So I would say here's what's being looked at now. 301 investigations are potentially going to happen with Vietnam. And that's a quick flag to say, guess what? If your product is now made in Vietnam, which we have product being made in Vietnam, there is a potential that 301 would be imposed or in some form of a 301 on the investigations in Vietnam as well. All of that just adds to the complexity of this shuffle of all of the things we're trying to do to avoid some of these tariffs, or at least understand how to manage them and create optionality within your supply chain to be able to say, well, now I'm in Vietnam. Do I need to be in Thailand? Well, do I need to be in Indonesia? And for us, we can't just pick up our tools and move that quickly. However, I say that to just give you a heads up that DC is definitely looking at other avenues with regard to outside of China now in implementation of 301. So back on the recap, make sure you look at your lists one, two, three, and four based on the 301, and then what your applicable area is for your product based on your HTS code and how it's aligned, and being able then to provide comment to potentially get off from those lists. So.
And one thing I'm going to make sure we do on our side is I was navigating our dashboard a little bit to we need to bring those lists into some of our goods targeted a little bit more so that folks can more easily access those lists because I'm trying to pull it up real time and had some difficulties doing that. So that's one thing that we'll do on
Wonderful.
and great comment as well. Um,
Wonderful.
and I would also, as you're talking about questions for the group, Phil, I would also encourage our folks online. You know, we're talking through this folks are probably scratching their head wondering about a question and if they should ask. This is actually the forum where if folks have questions, they should ask. The whole reason that this webinar exists is very quickly we had a lot of questions come to us about tariffs early last year. And as the World Trade Center, to have a bunch of individual one-on-one meetings was just impossible. So we gathered as a team and asked, what can we do to get this information out to businesses and have a fluid question and answer forum? And this is it. So, asking these questions to Phil, this is a great opportunity to access all of his expertise and knowledge. And so, dropping something in the chat or socializing it here, and we can have a back and forth. This is definitely a good platform to do that. So if you have a question, you want to drop it in the chat, please feel free to do so. And while we see, we've got a few minutes left here. If we do have a question, we'll have time for one. But since we don't right now, Phil, I just want to ask, a lot of our conference and Jeremy was so great on a panel last year talking about
Good.
this and Traeger and what you guys are doing. And we heard this as another theme this year was, you know, um, don't freeze, go on offense, right?
Hmm.
Look at what you're doing, mitigate the risks, and keep moving forward. A lot of that in the theme has been supply chain diversification and thinking through
Yep.
how to mitigate your risks that way. And one of the things that we heard a heavy emphasis on this year was actually building in expertise. So maybe as a closing thought, if we don't get a question into the chat, like what as we bring those back up and having this as a topic that came up in our conference, do you have any thoughts or
Mm.
suggestions, at least from a perspective of a manufacturer facing these things now, that could maybe help some of our businesses who are not in that mindset already really get to that mindset?
So, not to be master of the obvious in saying this, but I bump into a lot of companies and they're asking me questions around this. And the advice that I give them is don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask your representatives, your congresspeople. Don't be afraid to get in the game. And it's interesting and it's a little mucky when you get in here, but it is very valuable to understand what your options are. Again, a little bit for those of you who are wanting to jump into the game, utilize the WTC as kind of that springboard with their resources to point you in the right direction. But don't be afraid to just say, wow, I'm going to let this happen to me. Back to Ben's comment, getting on offense, even if you don't know a lot about it. And again, I am always open to a conversation or a call or an email to help anybody in our Utah group. But I would say, don't be afraid, jump in on it and give it a try. Your congressmen, your representatives, typically they are there to help. Especially our Utah representatives have been fantastic. So.
It's great feedback. Thank you so much. And I do see we received a chat from William. He says, if you're importing material with high chromium content, make sure to use the appropriate HTS. There are tariff exemptions for it.
That's
Any
right.
additional sort of thoughts on that or additional comments on that thread?
That's perfect, William, because going back to understanding what your HTS code really is aligned to, there's all types of new scrubs that are happening, like did your HTS code match with regard to not only the right IEPA tariff, date, timestamp, and so on, but is it truly aligned to what the scope of your product is? And many times it gets the wrong HTS code. So he's exactly right. Make sure your HTS code is spot on so you're getting the benefit or at least understanding what you're being charged for. That's a great comment.
Well, thank you so much, Phil and Ben. Thank you for taking the time, Phil, to speak with us today. And thanks to
Happy to.
everyone who tuned in. If you have any questions, please email us and feel free to visit our website to learn more about other upcoming events. And we look forward to seeing you next Friday. Take care, everybody.
Wonderful. Thanks,
Thanks,
Ben.
everyone.
Thanks, Christine.
Thanks, Will.